In the quiet town of Cedar Ridge, life moved at a pace dictated by the rhythm of nature. Nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, it was the kind of place where everyone knew each other's names, where children played freely in the streets, and where evenings were spent on porches watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. The people here lived simple lives, farmers tending to their crops, shopkeepers running family businesses, teachers shaping young minds, and mechanics fixing up old cars. It was peaceful, predictable even, until one evening when something extraordinary shattered that tranquility. It began just after dinner time. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving behind a canvas of deep blue scattered with twinkling stars. Families gathered indoors or outside, enjoying the cool breeze that signaled the end of another ordinary day. But then, without warning, the night sky started behaving strangely. At first, it was subtle, a faint shimmer, almost like heat waves, rising from asphalt on a summer afternoon. People noticed it but dismissed it as an odd trick of the light. After all, Cedar Ridge wasn't known for anything out of the ordinary. But soon, the shimmer grew more pronounced. The air seemed to ripple, as if the sky itself were made of water disturbed by an invisible hand. Some thought it might be northern lights, though they rarely appeared this far south. Others speculated about weather anomalies or atmospheric disturbances. A few joked nervously about aliens, chuckling uneasily because the idea seemed too absurd to entertain seriously. Yet no one could look away. The phenomenon was mesmerizing, drawing crowds into the streets as neighbors exchanged theories and uneasy glances. As the minutes stretched into hours, the ripples intensified. What had started as a gentle distortion now resembled waves crashing against an unseen shore. And then came the moment that silenced every voice in Cedar Ridge. A jagged tear appeared in the fabric of the sky. It wasn't metaphorical. It was literal. The darkness split apart like torn paper, revealing something beyond, something impossible. Beyond the rift, gleaming metal structures loomed ominously, their surfaces reflecting what little light managed to filter through the widening. Yep, they were enormous, dwarfing even the tallest skyscrapers humans had ever built. Their shapes were angular and menacing, bristling with weapons and technology so advanced it defied comprehension. The townsfolk stared upward in collective disbelief. Gasps turned into murmurs which quickly escalated into shouts of alarm. Children clung to their parents while adults instinctively reached for phones to capture the surreal sight. Social media lit up within seconds as videos and photos flooded platforms worldwide. News outlets scrambled to report on the unfolding event, their anchors struggling to maintain composure as they described what they were witnessing. Scientists debated whether this was some kind of mass hallucination or a previously unknown natural phenomenon. Government officials convened emergency meetings, though none dared admit publicly how utterly unprepared they were for something like this. Back in Cedar Ridge, fear mingled with awe. For many, the initial shock gave way to questions. Who or what was responsible? Was this a sign of impending doom or merely a cosmic curiosity? No one had answers, but everyone felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on them. Rumors spread faster than wildfire. Some claimed the rift was caused by secret government experiments gone wrong. Others whispered about divine intervention, interpreting the event as either punishment or salvation. Still others insisted it was proof of extraterrestrial life, though most dismissed such ideas as science fiction nonsense. Among those watching the spectacle unfold was Sarah Thompson, a high school science teacher who had always been fascinated by the mysteries of the universe. Unlike her neighbors, she didn't immediately jump to conclusions. Instead, she observed carefully, noting details others overlooked: the pattern of the ripples, the way the metallic structures seemed to hum, faintly despite being miles above the ground. Her analytical mind raced through possibilities, discarding implausible explanations while searching for logical ones. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than met the eye. Sarah wasn't alone in her fascination. Across town, Jake Miller, a mechanic with grease-stained hands and a knack for solving problems, stood outside his garage, gazing upward with equal parts wonder and suspicion. To him, the strange occurrence felt less like magic and more like machinery malfunctioning on a grand scale. He wondered aloud to his dog, Max, what if whatever's holding that sky together is breaking down? Like when an engine overheats and blows a gasket? Though he lacked formal education beyond high school, Jake possessed a practical intelligence honed by years of tinkering with engines and electronics. His instincts told him there was a solution to this puzzle, even if it eluded him for now. As the night wore on, the rift continued to expand, exposing more of the mysterious structures beyond. The largest of these resembled a fortress floating in space, its surface covered in intricate designs that pulsed faintly with an otherworldly glow. Smaller vessels orbited around it, their movements precise and deliberate. It became clear that these weren't random objects, they were ships, alien ships. The realization sent a fresh wave of panic coursing through Cedar Ridge. If these beings had come from beyond the stars, what did they want? Were they friend or foe? Despite the growing hysteria, not everyone succumbed to fear. Sarah and Jake, along with a handful of other curious individuals, found themselves drawn together by a shared desire to understand what was happening. They gathered in the town square, pooling their knowledge and brainstorming ideas. Sarah suggested consulting ancient texts, believing that humanity might have encountered similar phenomena before. Jake proposed experimenting with radio frequencies, theorizing that sound waves could interact with the alien ship somehow. Though their approaches differed, both agreed on one thing: doing nothing was not an option. Meanwhile, the rest of the world watched in stunned silence as news of the event spread. Governments issued statements urging calm, though their words rang hollow against the backdrop of global unease. Military forces mobilized, positioning themselves near major cities in case the situation escalated. Astronomers trained telescopes on the rift, capturing images and data that only deepened the mystery. Scientists argued over potential explanations, ranging from wormholes to parallel dimensions, but none could offer definitive answers. For the people of Cedar Ridge, however, the focus remained local. This was their town, their sky, and their problem to solve. As dawn approached, casting a pale light over the fractured heavens, a sense of determination settled over the community. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. For now, the rift hung suspended above them, a silent reminder of how fragile and interconnected everything truly was. And as Sarah often reminded herself during moments of doubt, never make a human angry. Little did she know, those words would prove truer than she could have imagined. As the days passed, the initial shock of the sky tearing open began to give way to a deeper, more unsettling reality. The alien ships, massive star destroyers that loomed ominously above Cedar Ridge, showed no signs of leaving. Instead, they remained suspended in the void beyond the rift, their metallic surfaces glinting coldly in the sunlight. For the townsfolk, life had become an endless cycle of uncertainty and dread. Every morning brought new questions, new fears, and new attempts to make sense of what was happening. The government issued statements urging calm, but those words felt hollow when the evidence of an otherworldly presence hung right above their heads. Sarah Thompson spent most of her time poring over books and documents, searching for any clue that might explain the phenomenon. Her small apartment was cluttered with stacks of ancient texts, scientific journals, and handwritten notes. She had always been drawn to stories of celestial events and unexplained occurrences, and now she wondered if humanity's past held answers to its present predicament. Late one night, while flipping through a dusty tome borrowed from the town library, Sarah stumbled upon something intriguing: references to sky portals mentioned in myths from various cultures. These accounts described tiers in the heavens that revealed other realms or beings beyond human understanding. Some claimed these portals were created by gods. Others suggested they were natural phenomena caused by cosmic alignments. Whatever the truth, the descriptions eerily mirrored what was happening now. Excited by her discovery, Sarah shared her findings with Jake Miller during their daily meeting at the town square. By now, a small group of curious individuals had formed around them, united by a shared determination to understand the situation. Among them were Emily Carter, a retired astrophysicist who had moved to Cedar Ridge seeking peace after decades working for NASA, and Tom Harris, a local farmer whose fascination with UFOs made him an unlikely but valuable ally. Together, they debated theories, exchanged ideas, and brainstormed ways to communicate with, or defend against, the mysterious visitors. Jake listened intently as Sarah explained her research, his brow furrowed in thought. "So you're saying this has happened before?" he asked, leaning forward. "Maybe not exactly like this, but close enough," Sarah replied. "These myths talk about portals opening up in the sky, revealing things humans weren't ready to see. Sometimes they describe beings coming through, some friendly, some hostile." "Well, I don't think we're dealing with anything friendly here," Tom interjected grimly. He pointed toward the rift where one of the smaller alien ships had begun moving closer to Earth. Its sleek design and ominous glow sent shivers down everyone's spines. "Look at those things. They're weapons, pure and simple." Emily nodded, slowly, her expression grave. "From what I've seen so far, their technology is centuries ahead of ours. If they wanted to attack, we wouldn't stand a chance." The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. Despite their efforts to remain hopeful, the group couldn't ignore the stark reality. Humanity was completely outmatched. Yet amidst the fear there was also defiance. These weren't just ordinary citizens, they were survivors, determined to protect their home no matter the odds. Jake returned to his garage later that evening, his mind racing with possibilities. While Sarah focused on ancient texts and theoretical explanations, he preferred practical solutions. Over the years, he had developed a reputation for fixing things that others deemed beyond repair, from broken-down tractors to malfunctioning radios. Now faced with the greatest challenge of his life, he approached it the same way, methodically, analytically, and with unwavering determination. Inspired by Sarah's mention of sound waves interacting with the rift, Jake decided to experiment with radio frequencies. He rummaged through boxes of old equipment, pulling out parts he hadn't touched in years. Radios, transmitters, amplifiers, all of it found new purpose under his skilled hands. By midnight, he had assembled a makeshift device capable of broadcasting a wide range of frequencies. The plan was simple, yet risky. Aim the signal at the nearest alien ship and see if it elicited any response. The next morning, Jake invited the group to witness the test. They gathered near the edge of town, where the open fields offered an unobstructed view of the rift. Nervous energy crackled among them as Jake powered up the device. "All right, here goes nothing," he muttered, adjusting the dials. A low hum filled the air as the machine came to life, emitting a series of tones that grew louder and more complex. At first, nothing happened. The alien ship continued its slow descent, unperturbed by the strange sounds emanating from below. Just as doubt began creeping into their minds, something extraordinary occurred. The ship faltered mid-air, its smooth trajectory interrupted by a sudden wobble. Sparks erupted along its surface, accompanied by a faint whining noise that echoed across the valley. Then, without warning, it stopped moving altogether, hovering awkwardly as if caught in an invisible net. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence was deafening, broken only by the distant chirping of birds and the rustling of leaves. Finally, Tom broke the spell. Did we just mess with an alien spaceship?" Jake grinned despite himself. "Looks like it." Their success was short-lived, however. Within minutes, another ship emerged from the rift, larger and more menacing than the last. It positioned itself directly above Cedar Ridge, casting a shadow that blotted out the sun. Panic rippled through the crowd as people realized the aliens were responding, not with hostility, but with intimidation. The message was clear. Humanity's interference would not go unanswered. Back at the town square, tensions ran high. Word of Jake's experiment spread quickly, sparking both admiration and criticism. Some hailed him as a hero, crediting his ingenuity for exposing a potential weakness in the alien ships. Others accused him of recklessness, arguing that provoking such powerful adversaries could lead to catastrophic consequences. Even within their own group, opinions were divided. "We need to be careful," Emily cautioned during their next meeting. "We don't know what kind of retaliation they're capable of. One misstep, and we could end up starting a war none of us can win." "But doing nothing isn't an option either," Jake countered. "If we sit around waiting for them to make the first move, we'll lose whatever advantage we have. That ship didn't just stop because it felt like it. It stopped because we hit it with something it didn't expect." Sarah nodded in agreement. "Jake's right. We can't afford to let fear paralyze us. But Emily's point is valid too. We need to proceed strategically. Understanding their motives should be our priority." With renewed resolve, the group shifted their focus to gathering information. Sarah delved deeper into her research, uncovering more parallels between ancient myths and current events. She discovered recurring themes of negotiation and cooperation, suggesting that humanity's ancestors had sometimes managed to coexist peacefully with extraterrestrial entities. Encouraged by these findings, she proposed reaching out to the aliens, not with aggression but with curiosity. Meanwhile, Jake refined his device, experimenting with different frequencies and intensities. Each test yielded new insights, though progress was slow and fraught with setbacks. Still, the mere fact that they had affected the alien ships gave them hope. Perhaps humanity wasn't as powerless as it seemed. Elsewhere, governments around the world grappled with their own dilemmas. Military leaders debated whether to launch preemptive strikes, while diplomats explored diplomatic channels despite the lack of direct communication with the aliens. Scientists analyzed data collected from the rift, piecing together fragments of knowledge that hinted at vast, incomprehensible forces at play. The global response was chaotic, marked by conflicting agendas and mounting pressure to act decisively. In Cedar Ridge, however, the situation felt strangely personal. This wasn't just a geopolitical crisis. It was a threat to their homes, their families, their very existence. And as the days turned into weeks, a quiet resilience took root among the townsfolk. They might not have had advanced weapons or cutting-edge technology, but they had something equally valuable: unity. Neighbors helped neighbors, sharing resources and offering support. Local businesses donated supplies to aid in the group's experiments. Even skeptics who had initially dismissed the phenomenon found themselves contributing in small but meaningful ways. Through it all, Sarah often reminded herself, and the others, of a simple truth: never make a human angry. It was a phrase she had picked up from her grandfather, who used to say it whenever someone underestimated him. At the time, she hadn't fully understood its significance. Now, surrounded by uncertainty and danger, she realized how profound it was. Humanity might be flawed, vulnerable even, but it possessed an indomitable spirit that refused to back down. And if the aliens underestimated that spirit, they would soon learn just how formidable it could be. The days following Jake's successful experiment with the radio frequencies brought both hope and heightened tension to Cedar Ridge. The group of unlikely heroes, led by Sarah Thompson and Jake Miller, found themselves thrust into a role they had never imagined: defenders of humanity against an unknown alien force. While their initial success in disrupting one of the alien ships was encouraging, it also set off a chain reaction that neither they nor anyone else could have anticipated. The larger ship that had descended ominously above the town remained stationary, casting its shadow over Cedar Ridge like a silent predator waiting to strike. Its presence loomed not just physically but psychologically, sowing seeds of fear and uncertainty among the townsfolk. Sarah spent most of her time buried in research, determined to uncover more about the aliens' intentions. Her fascination with ancient texts had already yielded intriguing parallels between historical accounts of celestial phenomena and the current crisis. One particular story caught her attention: a tale from Mesopotamian mythology describing beings who came through a tear in the heavens, seeking refuge after their world was destroyed. According to the legend, these beings initially appeared hostile but eventually formed an alliance with humans when mutual trust was established. Could this be what was happening now? Were the aliens refugees rather than invaders? She shared her findings with the group during one of their nightly meetings at the town square. By now, the makeshift headquarters had become a hub of activity. buzzing with discussions, experiments, and planning sessions. Emily Carter, the retired astrophysicist, listened intently as Sarah explained the myth. If these aliens are fleeing something, like their home planet dying, it changes everything, Emily said thoughtfully. It means we might not be dealing with conquerors but survivors. Jake nodded, though his expression remained skeptical. Even if they're refugees, that doesn't mean they won't hurt us if they feel threatened. Look how fast they responded when I messed with their ship. They're powerful, and we're still figuring out what makes them tick. Tom Harris chimed in, his voice tinged with frustration. Powerful or not, sitting here guessing isn't going to get us anywhere. We need answers, and we need them fast. What if they decide to attack tomorrow, or tonight? The question hung in the air, unspoken but palpable. Time was running out and everyone knew it. The rift in the sky showed no signs of closing, and the alien ships continued to hover menacingly above Cedar Ridge. Every passing hour brought new reports of similar sightings around the globe, suggesting that this wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a much larger pattern. Governments scrambled to respond, deploying military forces near major cities and issuing public statements urging calm. But behind closed doors, leaders debated drastic measures, including potential strikes against the alien fleet. Back in Cedar Ridge, the group decided to take matters into their own hands. Armed with limited resources but boundless determination, they devised a bold plan to gather more information about the aliens. Using Jake's modified radio device, they hoped to send targeted signals, not to disrupt the ships this time, but to communicate. The idea was risky. Attempting to establish contact could provoke the aliens further. Yet, as Sarah pointed out, doing nothing carried its own risks. We can't afford to wait for someone else to make the first move, she argued. If we want to survive this, we need to understand who or what we're dealing with. With Emily's guidance, they crafted a series of simple mathematical patterns encoded into sound waves, hoping the aliens would recognize them as intelligent communication. Numbers were universal, transcending language barriers, and perhaps the aliens would interpret the signals as a gesture of goodwill. It was a long shot, but it was all they had. The night of the transmission arrived under a blanket of thick clouds, muffling the stars and adding to the eerie atmosphere. The group gathered on the outskirts of town where Jake had set up his equipment. Nervous energy crackled among them as he powered up the device, adjusting the dials until the signal locked onto the nearest alien ship. For several tense minutes, nothing happened. Then suddenly the ship emitted a low hum, almost imperceptible at first but growing louder and more distinct. It was responding. It worked, Sarah exclaimed, her voice trembling with excitement. They're listening. But before anyone could celebrate, the hum transformed into a series of pulsating lights emanating from the ship. The lights flashed, in rhythmic patterns, each sequence slightly different from the last. Emily quickly grabbed a notebook, jotting down the intervals and repetitions. It's a response, she murmured, her eyes wide with awe. They're trying to talk back. Over the next few hours, the group worked tirelessly to decode the message. With Emily's expertise in mathematics and Sarah's knowledge of ancient symbols, they began piecing together fragments of meaning. The pattern suggested coordinates, locations scattered across Earth's surface. Some were familiar landmarks, while others pointed to remote areas rarely visited by humans. Whatever the aliens wanted, it seemed they were directing humanity's attention toward specific places. As dawn broke over Cedar Ridge, the group convened to discuss their findings. Exhaustion lined their faces, but there was a spark of triumph in their eyes. These coordinates must mean something, Sarah said, spreading a map across the table. Maybe they're showing us where they've been monitoring us, or where they plan to go next. Or maybe they're asking for help, Emily added softly. If they're refugees, they might be looking for safe zones. Jake frowned, his practical mind racing through possibilities. Helping them comes with risks. How do we know they won't turn on us once they get what they want? Tom sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Trust is a two-way street, but right now we don't even know if they're capable of understanding it. Despite the uncertainties, the group agreed that ignoring the message wasn't an option. If the aliens were indeed seeking assistance, Humanity had a moral obligation to consider it. After all, survival often depended on cooperation, even with those vastly different from oneself. With this in mind, they decided to share their discovery with local authorities, hoping to gain support for further investigation. News of the decoded message spread quickly, drawing both admiration and skepticism. Some hailed the group as pioneers, crediting their ingenuity for bridging the gap between species. Others dismissed their efforts as reckless, arguing that engaging with the aliens could lead to disaster. Nevertheless, the ripple effect of their actions extended far beyond Cedar Ridge. Inspired by their example, other communities began experimenting with similar methods, using whatever tools they had to interact with the alien ships hovering above their towns. Meanwhile, the global situation grew increasingly volatile. Military forces stationed near major cities reported strange movements among the alien fleet, raising fears of an imminent attack. Governments issued conflicting orders, some advocating diplomacy, while others prepared for war. Amidst the chaos, ordinary citizens took matters into their own hands, organizing grassroots efforts to protect their neighborhoods. From building makeshift defenses to sharing supplies, people demonstrated remarkable resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. In Cedar Ridge, life continued in a fragile balance between hope and fear. The townsfolk rallied around Sarah, Jake, and the rest of the group, offering whatever help they could. Local businesses donated materials for constructing better communication devices, while volunteers helped maintain order and morale. Even children contributed, drawing pictures of the alien ships and imagining peaceful outcomes. In moments of despair, these small acts of kindness reminded everyone of what truly mattered: community, compassion, and the enduring human spirit. Yet beneath the surface, tensions simmered. Not everyone believed in the group's approach. Skeptics argued that focusing on communication was naive, insisting that humanity needed to prioritize defense above all else. Tensions came to a head during a heated town meeting, where voices rose in passionate debate. "We're wasting time talking to them," shouted one man, pounding his fist on the table. "What we need are weapons, not words." Sarah stood up, her calm demeanor masking the storm of emotions inside her. "Weapons won't solve this," she countered firmly. "If we start fighting without understanding why they're here, we'll only escalate the conflict. We owe it to ourselves, and to future generations, to try every possible avenue before resorting to violence." Her words struck a chord, silencing the room. Slowly, heads began nodding in agreement. Whether driven by logic or desperation, the townsfolk realized that unity was their greatest strength. Divided, they were vulnerable. Together, they stood a chance. As the meeting concluded, Jake pulled Sarah aside. "You really think we can pull this off?" he asked quietly, his usual confidence replaced by uncertainty. Sarah smiled faintly, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I do know one thing. Never make a human angry. If push comes to shove, we'll show them exactly what we're capable of." It was a promise that resonated deeply within her. Humanity might be flawed, imperfect, and woefully outmatched, but it possessed something no advanced technology could replicate: the indomitable will to survive. And as long as that spirit burned brightly, the days following the decoding of the alien message brought a whirlwind of activity to Cedar Ridge. The coordinates provided by the aliens had sparked both curiosity and concern, not just locally, but globally. Governments scrambled to investigate the locations indicated on the map, deploying teams of scientists, military personnel, and diplomats to assess the situation. Meanwhile, Sarah, Jake, and their group continued working tirelessly to decipher more of the alien communication, hoping to uncover additional clues about their intentions. The atmosphere in town was electric, a mix of anticipation, fear, and determination. As the global response intensified, so did the behavior of the alien ships. The massive Star Destroyer that had loomed above Cedar Ridge began emitting low-frequency vibrations that resonated through the ground, rattling windows and unsettling nerves. People reported strange phenomena: electronic devices malfunctioning, animals behaving erratically, and an eerie sense of being watched. It was as if the aliens were testing humanity's resolve, probing for weaknesses before making their next move. Despite these ominous signs, the group refused to back down. If anything, the escalating tension only strengthened their resolve. Jake spent hours refining his radio device, determined to improve its range and precision. He knew that maintaining open lines of communication with the aliens was crucial, even if it meant risking further provocation. With help from Tom and a few other volunteers, he built a larger version of the machine, powered by scavenged car batteries and solar panels. The new setup allowed them to broadcast signals over greater distances, potentially reaching multiple ships at once. "If we can keep talking to them," Jake explained during one of their late-night brainstorming sessions, "we might be able to buy ourselves some time." Sarah, meanwhile, delved deeper into her research, poring over ancient texts and cross-referencing them with modern scientific data. She became convinced that the aliens' actions bore striking similarities to historical accounts of celestial visitors who sought refuge on Earth after fleeing catastrophic events on their home worlds. One particular passage stood out. "When the sky tears, those who come carry both danger and opportunity. To turn them away is to invite wrath. To aid them is to forge bonds unseen." The words echoed in her mind, reinforcing her belief that diplomacy, not hostility, was the key to survival. Her conviction was put to the test when news arrived about discoveries at the alien-designated coordinates. Reports trickled in from around the world, painting a picture of coordinated activity. At each location, researchers found evidence of advanced technology embedded in the environment. Devices that appeared dormant, but hummed faintly with energy. Some speculated that these artifacts were probes or sensors left behind by the aliens to monitor Earth's resources. Others feared they might serve as weapons waiting to be activated. Whatever their purpose, one thing was clear. The aliens were gathering intelligence, preparing for something big. In Cedar Ridge, the discovery reignited debates about how to respond. Skeptics argued that the presence of alien tech posed an unacceptable risk, urging immediate action to neutralize the threat. Supporters of Sarah's approach countered that destroying the devices could provoke retaliation, undoing weeks of cautious diplomacy. The divide threatened to fracture the fragile unity that had held the town together thus far. Tensions reached a boiling point during another heated town meeting where voices clashed in a cacophony of fear and frustration. "Enough with the theories," shouted a man near the front of the room, his face red with anger. "We're sitting ducks here while those things hover above us like vultures. We need to act now, before it's too late." Sarah stepped forward, her voice steady despite the chaos swirling around her. "Acting without understanding will only make things worse," she said firmly. "Yes, the aliens are powerful, yes, they're unpredictable, but we've already proven that we can communicate with them. That gives us leverage, a chance to negotiate instead of fight." Her words struck a chord, silencing the crowd momentarily. Then, unexpectedly, Emily Carter rose to speak. Her calm demeanor commanded attention as she addressed the room. "I've spent my life studying the stars, trying to understand what lies beyond our world. What I've learned is this: fear blinds us. It makes us see enemies where there may be allies. These beings didn't come here to destroy us. They came because they had nowhere else to go. And if we drive them away, or worse, attack them, we'll lose an opportunity to learn, to grow, to evolve." The room fell silent as her words sank in. Slowly, nods of agreement began to ripple through the crowd. Even those who had been most vocal about taking aggressive measures seemed to soften, realizing that rash decisions could have devastating consequences. For the first time since the crisis began, hope flickered brighter than fear. Buoyed by this shift in sentiment, Sarah proposed a bold plan, sending a delegation to one of the nearest alien-designated sites to establish direct contact. The idea was met with a mixture of awe and apprehension. "Are you serious?" Tom asked incredulously. "You want to walk right up to one of their machines? What if it's a trap?" "It's a risk," Sarah admitted. "But it's also our best shot at breaking the deadlock. If we show them we're willing to meet them halfway, maybe they'll do the same. After much deliberation, the group agreed to proceed cautiously. They assembled a small team consisting of Sarah, Jake, Emily, and 2 volunteers from the community, Mark, a former soldier-turned-farmer, and Lisa, a nurse with emergency response training. Armed with protective gear, medical supplies, and Jake's upgraded radio device, they set out for the designated site located deep within a nearby forest. The journey was tense, but uneventful, until they reached the clearing where the alien artifact stood. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, a towering structure made of shimmering metal that pulsed faintly with light. Strange symbols etched into its surface glowed softly, casting an otherworldly aura over the area. As they approached, the air grew thick with static electricity, raising the hairs on their arms. Despite their preparations, none of them could shake the feeling that they were trespassing on sacred ground. Jake positioned the radio device carefully, aiming its antenna toward the artifact. "All right, let's try this," he muttered, activating the signal. A series of tones filled the air, echoing eerily in the stillness. For several agonizing minutes, nothing happened. Then suddenly, the artifact sprang to life. Its glow intensified, bathing the clearing in blinding light as the symbols on its surface rearranged themselves into patterns that resembled the mathematical sequences used in previous communications. "It's responding," Emily exclaimed, her eyes wide with wonder. "They're communicating back." Encouraged by the positive reaction, Sarah took a step closer to the artifact, holding up her hands in a gesture of peace. "We mean no harm," she said aloud, knowing full well the aliens likely couldn't understand spoken language. Still, she hoped her intent would translate somehow. To everyone's astonishment, the artifact emitted a soft hum, followed by a holographic projection that materialized in midair. It depicted a planet ravaged by fire and ash, its skies choked with smoke. The image shifted to show vast fleets of ships fleeing the destruction, seeking sanctuary among the stars. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she realized the truth. "They're refugees," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Their world is gone." The revelation sent shockwaves through the group. All along, humanity had assumed the worst, that the aliens were invaders bent on conquest. Instead, they were survivors desperate for salvation. Moved by compassion, Sarah gestured toward the artifact again, mimicking the universal symbol for cooperation. Clasped hands, the hologram responded in kind, showing images of humans and aliens working side by side. Back in Cedar Ridge, word of the encounter spread quickly, sparking renewed optimism. Inspired by the delegation's success, other towns and cities began organizing similar missions to the remaining alien-designated sites. Each interaction yielded fresh insights, strengthening the fragile bond between species. Even governments, initially hesitant to embrace diplomacy, began shifting their stance, recognizing the potential benefits of collaboration. Yet, not everyone welcomed the change. In certain quarters, distrust lingered, fueled by fears of ulterior motives. Critics argued that trusting the aliens was reckless, warning of the dangers of sharing technology or resources. Their concerns were valid but ultimately overshadowed by the growing tide of goodwill. Humanity, it seemed, was ready to take a leap of faith. As Sarah reflected on the journey so far, she felt a profound sense of gratitude for her friends, her community, and the resilience of the human spirit. Though challenges lay ahead, she believed they could overcome them together. After all, as she often reminded herself, never make a human angry. And if humanity's capacity for ingenuity, compassion, and determination were any indication, the aliens would soon discover exactly why. The final chapter of Cedar Ridge's encounter with the alien fleet unfolded against a backdrop of cautious optimism and lingering uncertainty. The revelation that the aliens were refugees fleeing a dying planet had shifted the narrative entirely, transforming fear into empathy and hostility into hope. Yet, as Sarah Thompson, Jake Miller, and their group returned from their successful mission at the alien artifact site, they knew the road ahead would not be easy. Trust, especially between two vastly different species, was fragile, a delicate thread that could snap under the weight of misunderstanding or mistrust. Back in town, the delegation shared their findings with the community during an impromptu gathering at the town square. Using crude sketches and vivid descriptions, Sarah recounted the holographic projections displayed by the alien artifact, emphasizing the devastation that had driven the extraterrestrials to seek refuge among the stars. "They're not our enemies," she concluded, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "They're survivors just like us. Their home is gone, and now they're looking for a place to rebuild." Her words resonated deeply with the townsfolk, who had already demonstrated remarkable resilience throughout the crisis. Many nodded in agreement, some wiping away tears as they imagined the plight of the alien refugees. But not everyone was convinced. A small faction remained skeptical, voicing concerns about the risks of aiding such powerful beings. "What happens when they no longer need us?" one man asked bitterly. "Will they stay grateful or will they take what they want?" Jake stepped forward, his hands raised to calm the murmurs of dissent. "Look, I get it," he said, his tone measured but firm. "We're talking about beings way more advanced than us. That's scary. But think about this. If we turn them away, or worse, attack them, we're signing our own death warrant. They've got the power to wipe us out if they wanted to. Instead, they've been patient, waiting for us to make the first move. Doesn't that tell you something?" His argument struck a chord, silencing the skeptics for the moment. Slowly, the conversation shifted toward practical solutions: how to balance cooperation with caution, how to ensure humanity's safety while extending a helping hand. It was clear that Cedar Ridge, once an ordinary town, had become a microcosm of humanity's larger struggle to navigate this unprecedented situation. Word of the delegation's success spread beyond the borders of Cedar Ridge, inspiring similar efforts worldwide. Governments, initially hesitant to embrace diplomacy, began adopting a more collaborative approach, recognizing the potential benefits of working alongside the aliens. Scientists and engineers collaborated with military strategists to develop protocols for interacting with the alien ships and artifacts. Meanwhile, grassroots movements emerged, urging peace and mutual understanding. Humanity, despite its divisions, seemed united by a shared determination to rise above fear and embrace the unknown. In Cedar Ridge, life began to settle into a new rhythm. The rift in the sky remained open, a constant reminder of the extraordinary events unfolding around them. Yet instead of instilling dread, it became a symbol of possibility, a gateway to a future where humans and aliens might coexist. The townsfolk adapted to their changed reality with remarkable grace, finding ways to incorporate the alien presence into their daily lives. Children drew pictures of star destroyers and alien beings, imagining stories of friendship and adventure. Farmers shared their crops with visiting researchers, while shopkeepers offered discounts to volunteers assisting with communication efforts. Even the local church held special services, praying for peace and wisdom in navigating this uncharted territory. Sarah, Jake, and the rest of the group continued serving as intermediaries between humanity and the aliens. With each passing day, their understanding of the extraterrestrials deepened. Through trial and error, they refined their methods of communication, using mathematical patterns, visual symbols, and even music to convey messages of goodwill. In return, the aliens responded with increasingly complex transmissions, sharing glimpses of their culture, history, and technology. One particularly memorable exchange involved a melody played on Jake's modified radio device, which prompted the nearest alien ship to emit a harmonious response, a celestial symphony that left everyone awestruck. As trust grew, so did opportunities for collaboration. The aliens, though initially reluctant to reveal too much, eventually agreed to share certain technologies that could benefit humanity. These included advanced medical devices capable of curing previously incurable diseases, renewable energy, systems far superior to anything humans had developed, and tools for environmental restoration that promised to heal Earth's damaged ecosystems. In exchange, humanity offered resources, knowledge, and most importantly, sanctuary. Negotiations were painstaking, requiring patience, creativity, and compromise, but the results were transformative. Not all interactions were smooth, however. Misunderstandings occasionally arose, leading to tense standoffs that tested the fragile alliance. During one such incident, a malfunctioning alien probe triggered widespread panic in a neighboring town, prompting calls for retaliation. Fearing another escalation, Sarah and Jake rushed to the scene, armed with their communication equipment and a plea for calm. After hours of tense negotiation, they managed to defuse the situation, earning the gratitude of both sides. The incident served as a stark reminder of how precarious the relationship remained, and how vital open dialogue was to maintaining peace. Amidst these challenges, Sarah often found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. From the initial shock of the sky tearing apart to the discovery of the aliens' true motives, every step had been fraught with uncertainty. Yet, through it all, she had witnessed the best of humanity: courage in the face of fear, ingenuity in the face of adversity, and compassion in the face of the unknown. She realized that the aliens, too, had shown remarkable restraint and curiosity, choosing to engage rather than dominate. Together, they were forging a partnership unlike anything either species had experienced before. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields of Cedar Ridge, Sarah stood outside her apartment, gazing up at the rift in the sky. The massive Star Destroyer still hung suspended above the town, its silhouette blending seamlessly with the stars beyond. For a moment, she felt overwhelmed by the enormity of it all, the vastness of space, the fragility of life, and the boundless potential of cooperation. Then a familiar voice broke the silence. "You know," Jake said, joining her on the porch, "I used to think we were just tiny specks in the grand scheme of things, like nothing we did really mattered." "And now?" Sarah asked, turning to him with a smile. "Now I think maybe we do matter," Jake replied thoughtfully. "Not because we're strong or smart or anything like that, but because we refuse to give up. Because when push comes to shove, we fight, not just to survive, but to thrive. And that's something worth respecting." Sarah nodded, her heart swelling with pride. "Never make a human angry," she murmured softly, repeating the phrase that had guided her through countless moments of doubt. "Because when we're pushed to our limits, we find ways to overcome them." Their quiet moment was interrupted by the distant hum of an alien ship descending closer to the ground. This time, however, there was no fear, only anticipation. Over the past weeks, the aliens had begun making regular visits to designated sites, exchanging knowledge and resources with their human counterparts. Tonight they carried something new, a gift. As the ship landed gently in the clearing outside town, a delegation of scientists, government officials, and townsfolk gathered to witness the historic event. From the vessel emerged a glowing orb, hovering silently above the ground. Within moments it projected a series of images depicting two figures, one human, one alien, working together to build a bridge spanning galaxies. The message was clear. This was only the beginning. Together, humanity and the aliens would forge a future brighter than either could have imagined alone. As the crowd erupted into cheers, Sarah felt tears streaming down her cheeks. It wasn't just relief or joy. It was a profound sense of belonging, of being part of something greater than herself. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had also been beautiful. And as she looked around at the faces of her friends, neighbors, and newfound allies, she knew one thing for certain. The story of Cedar Ridge was far from over. It was, in fact, just the prologue to a new chapter in the history of the cosmos, a chapter written not by conquerors or victims, but by partners united by hope, resilience, and the unyielding belief that even in the face of the unknown, humanity would always persevere.